Sports with opinion, perspective, and predictions. This is 10 Before Tip, presented by Ford. Tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV.
All-NBA forward Anthony Davis has informed the New Orleans Pelicans that he won't sign a contract extension and he wants to be traded. He's eligible for a 5-year Supermax extension this summer worth $240 million. He'll be a free agent the summer of 2020. Let's hear from Drew Holiday and Coach Alvin Gentry.
What can they be and what are kind of your thoughts on it?
Just he had to do what he had to do for his family, and for him, what's best for his career. So Anthony's always been professional, and he's always been professional with us, and even more so, he's been friends and like a brother. So whatever decision he makes, I can't be upset with him. I know this is a business, but he's doing what's best for him.
I didn't want to imagine it happening, but you know, I mean, the NBA, you know, the things, you know, stuff happens, you know, so you deal with it, and that's what we're doing. We're dealing with you know, what we have and what's going on here, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to compete and try to turn our season around and see what can happen with it.
Let's talk a little bit about this potential trade. You guys have smiles on your faces because the rumor mill is a-churning, folks. Lonzo Ball's camp has now made it abundantly clear that if he were, in fact, included in a trade package from the Lakers, that he wants to be with a franchise that doesn't already have an established point guard. Griff, I'm just going to let you take it away.
I'm so grateful.
I'm done.
I am. I think it's adorable. They're just letting us know where they prefer to go. It's wonderful. Don't you feel like you missed out on playing in a league where you get to dictate this? So the reason this is so meaningful is if you're New Orleans and you're going to do a deal with the Lakers, which I think is very overblown, by the way, but if that's the destination you're looking at, Drew Holiday has been exceptional when he's played with another point guard. In theory, Lonzo Ball fits really, really well. But what doesn't fit really well is LeVar Ball. And the reason is Anthony Davis is asked out. And he's asked out because he has said, I can't win a championship here. I'm not healthy here or happy here. Well, the last thing you want then, if you're Dell Demps and the Pelicans, is to bring in another player who's going to make noise about being unhappy here. And you know what's really sad is it's not the player. It's not Lonzo Ball. All he's done is hoop.
Right.
It's LeVar Ball. And that actually does factor into this quite a bit. If you are New Orleans, you would literally make a decision potentially about a player you bring simply because you don't need more noise and drama in New Orleans. And that's really unfortunate if that was a player you were interested in.
Because you have to take it a step further. If he is included in a trade package that sends him to New Orleans and then he's unhappy, the franchise
right now
foundation continues to crumble.
Yeah, Griff is right on. You don't need another young player,
right?
Number 2 pick in the draft, really developing, I think, into a really good player, has a bright future to come into New Orleans, and between him, his dad, his camp, quote unquote, to be unhappy with also being in New Orleans and trying to now force his way out. Really tough situation for the Pelicans from that regard, and potentially for the Lakers. It could end up being something that prevents the deal from happening, assuming that that's what they're working on, and now lend itself towards another team being in the hunt to land Anthony Davis.
And you know firsthand how hard it is to play point guard as a rookie in this league. And Lonzo had a very good rookie year for a point guard if all you focus on is what he actually produced.
Yes.
But there's so much noise around the kid, he doesn't even get a fair shake. And it's really unfortunate for that to come out when it did. I think to some degree his injury and surgery corresponded to not wanting to be traded in the offseason. So they've done many things to dictate too much of the outcome for Lonzo off the court. Just leave Lonzo alone and let him dictate outcome on the court, and he can be a very, very key part of a very good team.
Griff, as I've scrolled through social media today, the NBA fortunately has many brilliant fans, but also some fans that don't understand why Anthony Davis can't come be part of their team. Will you break that down for the fans of perhaps the Celtics who would like to see him in green?
Yeah, so many fans actually could explain this better than I can. But I think ultimately what it comes down to is the easiest way to put it is Anthony Davis is a designated extension player. That means when he received his rookie extension, he received it as a designated player, which made it so that because he was eligible for additional money, by way of example, he became a Rose Rule player. He qualified for all of the criteria that made it possible to be a Rose Rule player. But he was also a designated player. And that's the key, because Boston has a designated player who signed an extension in Cleveland that we gave him as a designated player. He actually got 27.5% of the cap because he met criteria. You cannot acquire two of those designated players by trade and have them on the team at the same time. However, once July 1 rolls around and Kyrie can opt out and be coming back as a free agent, then you could acquire Anthony Davis in Boston. Kyrie resigns, you can have them both. You just can't have two designated players you acquired via trade at the same time.
Do you think then, D-Fish, that perhaps the timing of this trade request speaks loud and clearly as to where he actually wants to be? Because if it were Boston, why not wait until July?
Well, I do think it gives us a little bit of a feel for what he, maybe his agent, and Anthony Davis's, camp are thinking. I'm sure they understand this window that Griff just described, which developed from Derrick Rose having an MVP season as the youngest player in the history of our game. So there had to be some rules that spoke to those players being rewarded financially sooner than others. Davis's camp understands that. They have to know that this is the case. And it's a 7-day window here to see what can possibly happen. And there's basically no love lost. If it doesn't happen, they still have the offseason to look forward to. But now everyone knows Anthony Davis' intent is to not re-sign with the Pelicans. And I think everyone assumed that before, but now it's a reality.
Well, and I think one of the things that's really revealing in terms of the position that New Orleans is in from a position of power standpoint, when we saw Drew Holiday interviewed, they're not surprised in New Orleans. This is something they've known all year, and they've made it through a very difficult season to this point anyway. So I don't think the gambit of let's put all of the pressure on them for 7 days pays off ultimately, because I think the team itself is so comfortable in the space of AD probably is leaving.
And
right?
I think they knew that.
Right, they knew that already.
But to Anthony Davis's credit, I think he honestly wanted to see what they could accomplish this season.
Yeah.
And I do think some of the injuries and just the poor timing of some bad play, it left them kind of in a spot where they're just not going to be able to compete in the West. I think he wanted to do that, and now that that's clear, I think he felt like it was time to put it out there.
If we take it a step further, is it too soon to say that perhaps 1 month from now, LeBron James could be the longest tenured Laker?
Well, you know what's funny? If you think about it in terms of what a package would look like within 7 days, it's hard for me to conceive of feeling like that Laker package is what you want and not having already made a deal. Right? If you're Dell Demps and the Pelicans, that same Laker package has been on the table the whole year in theory, right? So why are these 7 days going to make you be more urgent? I think if you're Dell Demps and the Pelicans, what you need to be is very patient. Yeah. And you need to be mindful of the fact that the offer will get better once Boston gets into the mix. And maybe there's 3 or 4 of those guys that you've wanted that Magic and Rob Pelinka haven't been willing to part with. I don't think you should feel specific pressure relative to this time frame.
No way.
Ultimately, the leverage you have is that he's under contract for this year and one more. And that's really meaningful. He can't opt out until after next season.
Right.
So for Dell Demps' situation, he doesn't have to have incredible urgency now. He has to make the best deal he can possibly make. And in all likelihood, waiting until the end of the season gives him that opportunity.